Welcome back to part 2 of the Sunburst component series of videos here on YouTube. What we're going to do in this part is, like I said in the previous video, is add our row of beads to the inside edge of the frame. And then we're going to also add these accent beads to cover the thread bridges on the outside of our frame on the front of the project. In the first video, we added the first row of beads, which are these gray, beautiful frosted gray Toho beads, to the outside edge of the frame. Then we came through and did another round where we added the super duos. And then in the third round, we added the accent beads, but at the same time, we connected all of our super duos together to add some stability to the piece and also to give it a nice uniform and very pretty look. So let's go ahead and move on. At the end of the last video, we went ahead and we came down through this frosted gray seed bead here so that we're heading it towards the center of the beadwork. And we're going to flip our work over so that our working thread is to the back side of the frame, like this. And for the first stitch, instead of picking up 2 seed beads like the first row of brick stitch, we're actually going to pick up 3. We're going to pick up a black, a gray, and a black onto our needle. We're going to let them come all the way down and drop up against the frame just like this right here. Now, when we do the row on the inside, we still have to, once again, we have to use the bead frame as a thread bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these beads down just a little bit. I want my 2 black beads to come together and sit side by side. And I want my gray bead to poke up in the middle like an accent bead. So you want to get yourself a good gauge. So I'm coming out right here. Here's where my thread is. I'm going to scoot over just 1 thread bridge there on the frame. And I'm going to poke my needle in between those next 2 gray seed beads. And my needle is going to brush that frame. You can see it was brushing right there. And I'm going to pull my thread through to the front. Get my tail thread out. Now, you can see how this sets the beads up against the frame. I'm holding them with my finger. So now my thread's here on the front. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come back up through from bottom to top through that very last bead I picked up, which once again is, for me, is the bead on the left because I'm left-handed. And when I come up through there, I'm also going to poke my needle back through the frame to the back side of the beadwork. Then I'm going to pull everything in. And so my 2 little black beads are sitting pretty close together there, and the little gray bead is running this way across the top. So now I'm going to straighten this other black bead up. So I'm going to come over and come down from the top to the bottom through the bead on the right. And I'm also going to poke again to the front side of my beadwork. I'm going to pull that thread through, and then I'm going to go back up from bottom to top through the one on the left and go back to the back side of the beadwork, just like that. And I'm just doing the same thing I did. I'm straightening the black beads, just like we did when we added the row of gray beads at the very beginning. So now they're sitting really nicely beside each other, and this little gray bead is sitting here with the hole running side to side, just like that. Now for the remainder of the round, we're going to pick up a gray bead first, and then a black seed bead. Just like that. We're going to let them come all the way down here. And we're going to take our needle and we're going to come under the frame between the next 2 gray seed beads. And it's a little hard for me to see, but see how I'm coming through the next 2, between those next 2 seed beads, and my needle's scrubbing the frame right there. Now pull that through to the front. Then I'm going to come back up through that black bead and go back to the back. And pull. And the trick to this is you want your gray beads to look nice and uniform. If you get a gap, like see how that's kind of got a little bit of a gap right here, I should have come back between the gray beads here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. And in this round, you're going to have to use your judgment. This is why I'm saying this is an intermediate level project because you may have to backtrack. And I had to backtrack a couple of times on the first one. So I'm just going to come back through the black seed bead first. Pull my thread through. Then I can just drop my needle and pull it back through just like this. If you run into any troubles, just take your thread off the needle. And this one seems to be wanting to come off the needle, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull it off. And this thread's pretty thick, the Wildfire. It's not one of my favorites. So then I'll just need to rethread my needle and reposition that stitch. And don't get discouraged because basically this is going to happen a couple of times throughout this process. So now I've rethreaded. I'm just going to go ahead and pull everything back down where it was. And I'm going to get a little closer to that black seed bead, the previous black seed bead. So I just have to use my eyeball, and I'm going to come right back through that same hole. Just because I want to snug it up there. Now, once I'm back to the front side, I can come back from bottom to top through the black seed bead, and then go back to the back side of the beadwork. So don't get frustrated on this step. The point is, or the goal is so that your gray seed beads line up really close together like this. And that you don't have a big gap between the black seed beads underneath. And just so you can have a good idea of how we're going to go about this, you're going to need an even number again, because when you get ready to do the peyote on the back, we're going to be using these gray seed beads to do that peyote stitch. So once again, we want an even number. And because I've already made one, I can tell you that that number is going to be 30. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got 2 on. I'm going to count out 28 more of my gray seed beads here, and I'm going to put the rest of them back in the tube so that I don't make a mistake as I work along. So let me show you one more time. Pick up a gray and then the black. Drop them down. Come through the 2 gray seed beads with the needle touching the frame. Do not go over the thread bridge at the on the other side of those gray seed beads here. You want to make sure that you're touching the frame. Then we're going to come back up through the black one and go to the back. And pull it in. We're just going to keep working until we have our 30 gray seed beads added around. Actually, we're going to work till we have 29 added around. And when I come back, I'm going to show you how to add the last gray seed bead in. And I have one more of my 30 gray seed beads to add. And there's a difference between the way that this one worked out and the way that this one worked out. So on my blog post, part 2 of the blog series, it wound up that I couldn't get any more black seed beads along the edge, and I needed to add the gray seed bead. So if that's what happened in your situation, you can head on over to the part 2 in the Sunburst component series and check out how I added my last seed bead. But as it happens on this particular one, I have room for the last black seed bead. So I've picked up my gray and my black. I'm coming through the bead frame just like I've been doing, so that I can position my black bead to fill up this last little gap right here. And then I need to come back up through the black seed bead, just like I've been doing. And I'm going to go back to the back side of the beadwork. And now I want to connect that seed bead to the very first one I added in this round. So I'm just going to come right down from the bottom, or the top to the bottom, through the very first black seed bead. I'm also going from back to front. See how my needle is coming through to the front. And then I need to come back up through the black seed bead right there, just to finish closing off the beadwork there. And now, if your little gray beads seem to be gapped out a little bit, you can position them with your fingers. But what we're going to do next is going to pull it all together. So this is row 5, and all we're doing in row 5 is we're just going to add a thread all the way through all these gray seed beads. We're going to reinforce the circle of beads, and we're going to smooth out the look. So we're coming out of the top of that black seed bead, so we're just going to go straight into sewing in the same direction as you added the gray beads. So for me, it's going to be to sew around to the left, and I'm just going to push through the gray beads and not skip any, and I'm going to pull my thread. And I'm going to keep going until I've sewn all the way around. And then I'm going to make sure that I come back through the first few beads a second time. And if you want, you can actually sew through the beads more than once. But I don't suggest going more than twice, because later on we're going to have to peyote using these beads in part 3. So let's go ahead and just stitch ourselves around through all of our gray beads only. And make sure we don't skip any. And you'll notice that the beads are lining up really much more pretty as you pull that thread through, see? And we'll just work our way around. Go through a few, or as many or few as you want to. I'm almost back around. And then, like I said, we're going to want to make sure that we go through the first few a second time to close that stitch, to close the beadwork. So as I pull through here, I'm actually closing the beadwork. And you can see that I have a tiny little gap right here where I could potentially fit another gray bead in, but I'm just going to use my fingers to manipulate the lay of these beads, because I need to have an even number. And if I were to add an additional one, then that would throw off my count for later when I get ready to add this bead. So here I'm going to go ahead and work through the rest of these beads one more time, and I think I figured out a way to pull that little gappy bead where I want it to be, make it look a little bit better. So I'm just going to keep working around. And I'm not pulling super tight. Just nice and even tension. So now I'm almost there. I've just got to go through the bead before it, and then there's my little gap area right there. So I'm going to come through the bead to this side of that little gap. And because I have to go back down towards the bead frame anyway, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to skip over this black bead, and I'm going to come through this black bead here on the opposite side of that little gap right there. And I'm going to push down through that black seed bead towards the bead frame. And when I pull, I'm going to pull a little bit tighter. And you can see how that closed the gap a little bit for me, so it doesn't look quite so bad. Of course, when I hold it up there, it looks terrible because my camera is so magnified. But when I look at it from here, it's fine. All right, so now I'm ready to add my next round of beads, and this will be for row 6. And we will only be needing our milky grapefruit tohos for this round. All right, for the next row, in part 2 of my blog series, I discussed with you guys about these thread bridges laying here across the edge of the frame. And in most places, you're going to see that 2 thread bridges line up beside each other. It's a little hard to see right here, but you'll notice there's 2 in each little set. And for purposes of what we're about to do, and you're going to count both of those thread bridges as one unit. So we're going to start by picking up a grapefruit seed bead. No, actually, I'm sorry, we're not. We're going to have to pass under the first thread bridge. So we're coming out of that black bead right there that we dove down through. we're going to go and take our needle and go under those first couple of threads right here along the frame. So we're going to dive right under that thread bridge. We're going to pull our thread all the way through. And now we are ready to add some seed beads. So we're going to pick up our orange seed bead. And we are going to go under the next little grouping of thread bridges, just like that. And you'll be able to tell. You'll just have to pay close attention. When we pull our little thread into position, you'll see how it situates itself right there on the edge of the frame. And I've showed this technique in a previous video on my channel. I think it was the Ravishing Raspberry Dreamcatcher earrings. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around. And once again, you'll just have to use your judgment. It might take you a couple of minutes to get in the groove, but you'll want to situate the seed beads so that they look evenly spaced across the entire, circumference of the frame, like on this one here. And we're just going to be using the one seed bead at a time and passing under the next group of thread bridges. Just like that. And if you do make a mistake, just take your thread off your needle, pull that one out, and rethread the needle and move forward. Just like when we did this group in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get all my beads added. We'll come back and we'll conclude this portion of the series. So I've worked my way around and I'm ready to add that last little grapefruit bead. I've got my bead on my needle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under that very first thread bridge, the first one I went under as I was coming out of that black seed bead from the center row. And I'm going to pull that bead into position. And you can see how uniformly I was able to get my accent beads, and it looks really pretty. If you turn it on the side, you can see that we're still working really well, staying on the same plane as our frame here, and except for our accent beads sit up just a little bit like a 3D effect, like that. And it looks really good. So that is the end of part 2. In part 3 on the blog, I haven't even gotten it written yet, but I have all the photos done. We'll show you guys how to add the stone to the center using the gray beads on the front, and then stitching, just pushing through to the back and doing a little bit of peyote off of the gray beads in order to secure that queen bead so that it can't sit and turn on its axis there. It looks pretty cool. Alright, so guys, don't forget to check out my new Skillshare class for these beautiful earrings here. And also remember that I am now on Patreon if you would like to make a little small donation to help me keep the free videos coming and help support me and the blog site. That'd be fantastic. I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you go over and check out the blog posts for the Sunburst component, part 1, part 2, and part 3 coming really, really soon. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and have a great day.